Hello, welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and today I'm joined by this nerd. Good, man. I am ready to go and ready to start talking about some morality uh, in this D&D Ideas. We're at number 195 for these suckers. Oh, hold on one second. We don't have your sound, and that could be a problem. We need Ted's sound. Why do we not have sound for Ted? I don't know either. That's right. No, that's not it. Can't hear Ted. Yeah, I know. Trying to figure it out now. There's for some reason the desktop audio, which is Ted, is not picking up. Matter of fact, no, Ted just annoyed me, so I just mute him. Ah, that's why. Let's see. Let's try this. All right, Ted, say something for me. No, we don't got you yet, but I think we're getting closer. Bear with us, folks, as we know what it is. I moved some things around and unplugged some things and plugged them back in. So now it's not picking up Ted for some reason, which he should be coming through. You should be coming through my headset, and that should do it. It should be right there.
Can you hear me now?
We can. We have a Ted.
All right. So like normally in these kind of a situations, it's a scenario where like, oh well, while Dave is figuring computer stuff out, I'll talk to the people. But if the problem is they can't hear me, then
You just
what's
have the mime. You were supposed to be miming everything the whole time.
well, I apologize. No, not not a good mime.
A
Uh
mime is a terrible thing to waste, or is it?
so all right. So how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir?
Part two. I'm still doing wonderful.
Well, that's good to hear. So
They
it's
heard my response. They just didn't hear your question.
sure, but like I got to do my thing.
So we're talking about morality tonight, and it's kind of your fault.
It's kind of my fault, as in I brought the subject up. But morality is one of those things that it should be a normal thing in games. It should, as dungeon masters or game masters, we should kind of test those limits. And we recently had, shall we say, an encounter or a session where the morality of the player characters was put into the question, and in some ways the characters were found somewhat wanting, and in other ways it's like, all right, you made the good decision at the end, but it's still a
Questions of morality, they don't bother me from the character standpoint. They really bother me from the player standpoint. Because, like, when you start introducing morality into your games and kind of like trying to test those bounds, you may learn something about your friends that you didn't want to know.
there have been a handful of times that things are said or done at the table, and it makes you question the people you're gaming with, but it's all good.
Yeah, you can start identifying the real sociopaths at your table.
So here's the premise, or here's the situation. For those of us who, or those of you who have been with these chats for a while, you might be familiar with the game that Dave is running. We call it Under the Dome. We're a motorcycle gang set in a post-apocalyptic fantasy future, and it's all good. We're having lots of fun. And the little bit of backstory, we had gone and we had hunted a wyvern for a separate thing, and when we went back out for another venture, a person who actually cared about the wyvern was like a druid that dealt with monstrosities, and they attacked us. And if you look at the pieces of the puzzle from the player standpoint, we knew that, oh well, we weren't exactly the greatest people for doing this, but we have to defend ourselves here. Well, then somebody says, well, we should track, them back to their lair. Well, I don't know whether it was track the monster to its lair or track the person to its lair, but most of the table just does what the boss says. Boss says we're tracking, so we track and we follow. Well, we follow into this, trapped area. We wind up fighting some other, monsters and hazards by the time we get to a house. Well, by the time we get to the house, we've already killed all the defenders. We've already driven off, all these things. And the woman answers the door and is like, "Don't kill my baby." It's like, oh man, how far over the line did we go here? And then Dave starts describing the loot that is inside the house because let's face it, we're not exactly the nicest of people. So some of them are pushing past. And it's like, all right, yeah, this is a bit much. But at any point in time, the one player could just be like, nah, this is our stuff, kill, and we got to turn on our kill stick. Thankfully, it didn't go that far. But man, I felt very much like, all right, there's this woman with a baby, and we're killing all of her defenders. We've already killed her husband. Man, we're bad people.
Yeah, and like you said, like some of the party was willing to go, okay, this is wrong, and some of the party's like, man, that's a lot of stuff.
Well, as Ted the player, I have a fascination with loot and treasure, and I really wanted to know what was there. Like, I love you, Dave, but you're not always the best at making sure that we get a decent amount of treasure.
I'm not the most generous of DMs when it comes
yeah,
to loot.
right. And it's we've been gaming a long time together. It is what it is. It does not take away from your skill as a GM and the stories that you tell. So I was fascinated to know, like, all right, what was there? What cool thing could my character come away with as his share? Whatever, no big deal. But I wanted to know. And the other players, they were like, all right, I definitely don't know what's going on here. Me and one of the other players were like, look, we're stepping back, and unless the boss says do something, we don't really feel right here. Zargon, thank you very much for the compliment on the beard. I try to look as nice as possible. But with the moral quandary was, how far is too far? In the harsh world that we live in, sometimes it's kill or be killed, and we can justify all the actions up until, or from my perspective, can justify all the actions up until the point where she's like, all right, there's this, there's that, but I'm not willing to kill a child to take their stuff and take the parent stuff. It was like, all right.
What about the Displacer Beast kitten? I thought you guys would be really tempted to take the kitten as well. I guess it's a cub, not a kitten, but
yeah, I don't see Vel as like the creature kind of type.
Yeah, pet person.
Like I don't even have a familiar because I've gone down that road. I mean, I've got a mini for a Displacer Beast kitten, so like I could be like, oh yeah, let's bring this in, and Ted would be all there for it. But it doesn't necessarily fit this character, and I'm like, as much as I would love that,
yeah,
into it. So I'm just like, all right, I'm a hands off, but I'm pretty sure that a couple others were definitely eyeing that up, and it could have been just an easily reach in and swipe. And I gave it a 50 to 60% chance of somebody being interested when you mentioned.
Yeah, as soon as there was a big fight where you guys killed the wyvern, a Displacer Beast, some summoned wolves, and the druid, and someone was like, we want to track it back to the lair. And frankly, like for all intents and purposes, in this particular case, the lair and for all of them is the same, right? It was the same area, so
Mm-hmm.
it was going to take you back, and I just love like when I have the opportunity to test the players, not just the characters in the game, and be like, all right, what are they going to do? I'm like, all right, well, they already said they want to find the lair and get any treasure they can. I'm like, fine. And and I was like, well, what am I going to do to make it at least a little bit of challenging so you just don't walk right up to it and have it
Mm-hmm.
like, as a DM trying to set the pacing, right, for the evening
Right.
too. You want it to be some kind of encounter, not just you guys kicking the door and, oh, there's the baby and the wife. And you get to that. So I wanted to amp you guys up a little bit more first.
Sure.
Um, so I was trying to figure out what to do. Then I was like looking, and I was like, "Oh, the grove spell from the druid is perfect. Like it's already got obstacles built into it. It's already got um, basically trents that are part of the spell practically, and I just added like one other monster, you know, for that, and that was plenty enough to get you guys going, and amped up to like, all right, we just had to fight our way through all of this. We're getting whatever's behind that door. It's ours now. We've earned it. We deserve it. We're the best. We're heroes. And then it's like a crying baby and the mother being like, please don't murder my child.
So when did you make the decision that the druid was going to have a wife and a child? Was it before
As
we had the
the
encounter?
instant you guys said I'm tracking it back to the lair, I was like,
Nice.
I'm like, all right, I'm gonna teach them. I'm gonna teach them a lesson, one way or another. Some people care and some people don't. But like I know, like you would care. Um, I think, Kurt would, right, and even Ryan would. I don't know Josh as well as I know the other guys.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Josh
could
is the
easily go. I could easily see Mark going to the dark side, right?
sure.
And in what little I know of Josh, maybe the dark side as well.
So I mean, to be fair, both Josh's character and mine were the first ones to be like, all right, this is a bit too much,
Yeah,
and was a lot of fun to kind of like look at the table and see like, all right, I mean, if the table that I'm sitting at is the table we game at. So like Josh and I are over here, Ryan's sitting, right around where I am now, you know, and I'm waiting for that crux decision to see what Ryan's gonna do because he was kind of like the middleman. I
yeah,
know usually, sides on the good side, but the character he was playing, I'm pretty sure like he was just like, all right, I'm waiting on the order. And if he was given the go, like, he would have zero problems of just
yeah. That
following.
is a little bit of a dirtball character. In the sense that like he can go either way. He just follows orders, right? It doesn't really
Yep.
matter. Yeah, like I don't think Kurt's character is the kind that would like go out of the way to do bad things. But
Mm,
also, if they're the orders, they're the orders.
yep. My
So
my particular sorcerer, he kind of bounces between chaotic good and chaotic neutral. Um, alignment is far more open, I feel, in fifth edition. It's not as important to the game. So like I try to put a little bit of chaos, into that character. And we're not always morally grounded. So like there's times that we've done things and I'm like, no, I don't need to be good here. But I feel like killing a woman or killing her child or taking from after everything else that pushes past neutral and definitely goes far into the evil. And he just was not willing to go that far. And it really begs the question of like how often are you creating these morality issues, in games? How often are you trying to put something in there, like specifically to test and see how far players are willing to go.
Oh wow, Zargon's digging way back into the past,
Yeah,
but
I
it
can
ties
see
into what's
that.
going on here now.
Sure.
Um, man, Dave, the player, barely remembers what happened, and what exactly, what we ended up doing, and also like so, Saber Dice is a hodgepodge of a bunch of different games to me. So I've got a bunch of different characters running through my head, but I don't think my character was kind of there when it happened, but I could also be wrong. So he would definitely not be for that. Wife murder is not approved. No, no. What would that be called? Matricide.
Matricide.
Yeah, I am personally against it, and so would all my most of my characters as well. But I know we made like a lot of really dark jokes about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like I think we started referring to that instant, like if it would have happened again or be done to somebody, as a Grindel brew. Like, is that guy gonna get Grindel brewed? Like, because like, first of all, that character was off to begin with. He was a dwarf in a party of halflings. He totally messed up our jive. Like, we could have had the all halfling party, but no, he had to play a dwarf. Uh, Mr. D&D sex icon Will had to do his own thing. So we knew there was something off about him, but like he was also a little crazy, and like I guess he was playing like a husband that was out adventuring but had like a nagging wife. Or maybe it was ex-wife. Maybe she threw him out, and then like she was like totally like berating him and ripping into him, and he just like strangled her to death and drowned her in a fountain. It was pretty dark.
Wow, that is pretty rough.
Oh yeah. Was who? But that was Jim Davis's character, Huel, right? I think, and it was that game was so fun, but that was also a very dark moment in it. Your memory is way better than mine, Zargon. If anybody gets a chance, you like actual plays, go back and watch those. It was a really fun group to play with, and there was a lot of good adventures there.
You know,
But yeah, like
the
I
Saber
do
Dice
like
games
to.
are.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the Saber Dice games are still up there. Oh, Dave's got it tattooed on his arm. It's
I
definitely
do. It's yeah. So this is the logo that could have been that vanishes.
that
That's
vanishes.
yeah. A buddy of
Just
mine and Ted's. He actually played in our 5e game for like 5 years, but lost his fight to cancer, and he did some logo work for us, and we couldn't agree on it, but I really liked it, so it has been immortalized on my flesh.
indeed, yep. So the not only the memories that you have of Saber Dice, but it's now linked to our dearly departed friend. So
Uh,
it's a nice tribute.
well, it's funny because Nicole, Anthony's wife, had gotten some tribute tattoos to him as well. One of them might be an actual cartoonized version of Anthony,
Oh
and
wow.
and the joke is like between Nicole and her friends and Anthony's friends is he would have hated it, all of them. So now me and Nicole we're starting our own Anthony tattoo club. It's a very distinguished and very elite membership of two.
All right, well, maybe I'll have to find what my favorite piece of Anthony is, and join the club.
There you go. But so I like introducing moral quandaries into my games to test the mettle of the players, right? And not just our character sheets, but like I think me and Ted were like on the same page. We may go about it differently sometimes, but like at the end of the day, we like to play the heroes and we like to play in heroic games. We like to run heroic games. To me, the worst is running a game for a bunch of characters that are all shitbags and terrible people, and or the quote unquote evil games. Like they never seem to last, and it always becomes some weird uh, uh,
Caricature is what you're trying to say.
character is the word I was looking for of of evil. So I haven't had very good experiences with it, but I have had really good experiences with playing heroic games and introducing those moral quandaries of like, what are you going to do? Like, the age old, would you kill Hitler in the crib when he was a baby? Right? He's going to be terrible, but he's still just a baby right now.
Yep.
So
So, off topic for just another moment. Zargon says, "Dude, all the Nerdarchy content is memorable." Hashtag Scarlet Sisterhood 6-year anniversary game. I don't know how many of them you're still in contact with, but the Scarlet Sisterhood was fantastic, and it would be totally awesome to even if it was just like a small arc or a one shot, getting those
yeah.
characters all back together again.
Well, I
would be
do
pretty
regularly
awesome.
talk to Robin, and I can get a hold of the rest of them. I believe I've not talked to most of them in a while though, but like we're like
Well,
Facebook friends, and we just like kind of like
after
see each other from a distance.
after the trip where you took me to the airport and we had our conversation about how uh your game ended for the
Uh-huh.
we couldn't play the finale. I've actually communicated with most of the Scarlet Sisterhood about what their characters would do in retirement. So I'm some point in time going to go back to Griffin Gaff.
Yeah.
And I just want to know, like, what are all of these things? What are all these people that are
I'm
so
waiting for your
powerful?
novella on what they did.
I mean, everybody gave me, like a couple sentences to a couple of paragraphs. There's nothing huge.
Yeah. Some
Yeah.
of them might just depend on how high they were when they were writing it.
the players and the characters.
Yes. I
Um,
mean, they did get the ogre they kind of apprehended hooked on halfling pipeweed. So,
oh yeah, and he
but
needs a lot of
it
it.
made him docile and easier to deal with and friendlier.
Yep. But I mean, we
So,
technically had, however many of, the 3 campaigns that wanted to retire out of Griffin Gaff could still be living there. That's a lot of 20th level characters settling down in one location. Like, what kind of problems could arise there with that many powerful folks?
nothing like nothing really, like unless like they're literally going there to deal, like unless they're the draw for the bad things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at that point it's like Cthulhu's coming through the portal or something, because anything shy of that.
But if memory serves, Agnetha was, going to be there for a little while before, she continued on to just, doing her typical wandering. I know that, oh crap, what was his name? Falcor Kreskanar was going to be, spending more time in the dragon realms, uh, but would occasionally appear in Griffin Gaff. Um, but like, I think other than that, like everybody else was pretty much gonna be there.
Yeah.
So it's a lot going on there.
Well, I mean, Relian did build a temple there,
Yep.
so he wasn't going anywhere. It's like, I
No,
got
no,
this
I mean
temple. Where am I gonna go?
it's a temple and it's a school that he said he's gonna like run for free. So
Yeah.
he had a significant amount of wealth.
That goddamn socialist commie bastard.
Sorry, man. But he was gonna like essentially, pay people to be educators and to elevate, education in Griffin Gaff. So I thought that was pretty cool.
So you've introduced morality in your games too, like in some pretty impactful ways. Like in your last game, it kind of towards the end,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think did Kurt roll divine intervention? He wasn't high enough to just get it. He rolled it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Kurt's character was a grave domain cleric, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He rolled to the god that we affectionately refer to as Bob. he rolled divine intervention, and he wanted to put the world back together. And his god is like, I am super powerful and I can do a lot of stuff, but I cannot unbreak the world. But I can unbreak this little piece of it if you like. And he was like, you know what? That sounds pretty good. And then what happened, Ted?
So in that back and forth questioning, and it happened like in a second, but it wasn't like direct communication. It was, ideas passing back and forth. But the god gave him the choice. He's like, look, I can do this if this is your request. And if you choose not to activate this power, I will go about my business, you go about yours, and you can call on me again should you need me. But if you do this, there are consequences to the action. And he's like, all right, do it. Well, at this point in time, it had been months, if not years, that had, transpired since the world broke. And you've got all these like massive chunks of land floating above. So essentially, you've got new land space that was not available to access to the sun. So in this time, civilizations had developed in these essentially, opened chasms. So when the section of Earth sank back down, Kurt's character like felt the weight of like thousands of deaths all at once. Like he looked at us like, oh shit, what did I just do? And it was really, really tough for that character to like, move forward with that, because it was like, all right, that a vast amount of power, something that took godly force to make a change. It was given the warning, and as a good character, just snuffed out thousands, if not tens of thousands of lives in that heat of a decision.
And the guy made sure he felt it too, right? Like that was.
Oh yeah. He felt the death of all of those folks.
Yeah. So there's a non-related question I'll grab real quick. I don't know why it's this way, Avram, but the for whatever reason the dice are always the two sides of the dice always equal one higher than the maximum number on the die, and I don't know why that is. I cannot tell you.
It's the median. So like 20 and 1, then 19 and 2. So you've got it so that you've got essentially its opposite number on opposite side of the die for balance.
There you go. Ted has the answer for you. All I know is it always equals one higher than the highest number on the die.
Yeah, it's meant to balance so that when you roll, you do get a random roll. Like if you roll a spin down die, you've got essentially the numbers in sequence. So it's not going to always give you a balanced roll, because if the die is just slightly off, it's going to skew towards certain areas. Whereas if like you've got a die that is properly balanced and properly numbered, even if it's slightly off, it's still going to be far more balanced because the numbers are spread properly as opposed to in sequence.
And then there's the saltwater test. There's nothing to do with numbers.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking of like moral quandaries in your games, is it something you put a lot of thought in, or do you just wait for opportunities?
A lot of times it's wait for opportunities. I feel like there was, I don't think it's as applicable with Zoo Mafia because like you're killers and bad guys to begin with there, but I feel like I put a little bit of, heft upon the decision that happened, last session. But a lot of times it's players are going to give you opportunities, and they're going to be, they're going to hang themselves out, or they're going to make, bad decisions. And that's when you leap. That's when you say, okay, I'm waiting for this. Now, obviously, like you said, you didn't plan that the druid was married and had an infant child when you put that encounter out there. But when somebody said, "Oh, look, let's go back to the lair," you're like, "All right, I can use this. I can do something with it." That's what you want to look for. You want to look for those moments where you can, really plug at it. Um,
Yeah, because you can't plan. You can't plan what your players are going to do,
mhm.
but you can take what they've already done and go, okay, what does this really mean? What could this mean? What are all the potential implications for the actions they've already taken? And hindsight's 2020, right? So
Oh, yeah,
you have
and
that benefit of tweaking it.
that's one of the fantastic secrets that that DMs use is like you have the ability to plan after the fact. You don't need to have anything after where you are now until you need it. So if you plan for the end of a session to be at a certain spot and you wait for somebody to be like, "Oh, well, let's do this or let's do that," you have a direction, you can take them there. So like happened in your game, "Oh, we should go back to the lair." Perfect. How do I twist this? How do I turn this and use it? So it's a prime example, which is why I felt like this would be such a good topic. But
Yeah, it's really like if you want to really introduce moral quandaries into your game, is just wait for your players to hand you the knife, and then all you have to do is twist it. Right? They're going to be the best ones. Nothing that I could plan, whole cloth is going to be as good as me just examining what they've already done.
I'm going to pause here because we're past the halfway point, which means a number of things. First and foremost, we're powered by Easy Roller Dice, so I should always check the link in the description to go check out some Easy Roller Dice because they're our dice of choice. They're awesome. They're always coming out with new stuff. Their stuff is always awesome. I can't make any promises about them rolling, more natural 20s than anything else, but I have seen some Easy Roller Dice do some amazing things. So yeah, do that with as you will.
And there's a
Uh,
promo code as well.
and there's a promo code to get 20% off your first order. Time is running out, but if you want to come join Dave or I with D&D in a castle and get access to a special tailored one shot with Jeremy Crawford that's kind of being teased out right now. There's still time to pick up your tickets and come join yours and Dave's truly to go have some amazing fun. D&D in a castle is an amazing experience. You absolutely should check it out if you've got the time, the availability, and the funds. But that's not all. It is also the first Monday of the month, which means a couple of things. It means giveaway and it means fan game. It is an odd numbered month, which means Dave gets to run the game for you guys this month. And I've got a list of players for him to contact. Um, so we've got Billy Boyo, Ellen Pierce, Eric, Danielle Landers, Keaton, Paul Smith, Jacob, and Schumann Boss, or Bozy maybe, Josh, and Thomas. So I will get those names and emails over to Dave to be able to reach out and get that game set up. It's typically the first 5 people who are willing and able to do the time frame that Dave selects are the ones that gets in. But as always, all of that information is in that introductory email. But is also our giveaway. So I've got a stack of stuff that I've pulled out here. It's somewhat sizable. So from our friends at WizKids, they're 2-dimensional minis. We got Monster Packs number 1 and 2. It's a total of 34 2D acrylic minis that we can be able to send out your way. There's a lot of fun stuff in here. You've got a barrel mimic. You've got some Sturges. It looks like a carrion crawler. You got an ogre. You got some elementals and a number of other things in there. We've got a special edition cover of Keys from the Golden Vault from our wonderful friends over at 1985 Games. We've got Castles and Keeps. These things are fantastic. There's lots of 2D scatter that you can be able to use in this. But with this one here, Beyond Scatter, there's a lot of like castles and rooms, or full on castle type stuff. So this is a fantastic book. I've got my copy, as well as a starter set for Dragons of Stormwreck Isle. So all of that is going to go to Michael Pamato. So I will get a email out to that person, usually within the next couple of days. And as soon as I have an address, that stuff will be sent directly to you. Wow, I did it all in 3 minutes. Huzzah.
Good job. Good job. So, I can't believe you got through it so fast.
I've been doing this for a while, and I try to streamline that because if your name's not called out, it's not super exciting content. So I try to boom, do it quick.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
All right, so morality. What else we got?
So there's also like this stuff that players don't really have control over.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like when Rylar got totally slagged.
Oh man.
Just because you guys made the wrong choice, but you didn't really have any way of knowing the right choice.
Yep.
Right? It's just like you had a choice of going right or left. You chose right instead of left, and here's the outcome. Right? And then then it becomes a role playing tool, right, for the players to use because the outcome's already kind of happened. There's nothing they can do now, but then some of the players definitely use that going forward as motivation, or kind of change the lens that they see the world through. And in that particular case, what happened was a giant monster was released from basically like a prison ship, and the way to stop it was in the ship. But the players are like, "Oh, we got to go stop the big monster," so they start chasing this monster that is like a kaiju essentially, and there's no way for them to stop it. And after they waste some time, they're like, "Well, maybe there's some clues in the ship." But by the time they explore the ship and figure out what they had to do, it's already wiped out a whole city. And then the players, you kind of have to deal with the aftermath, and then it rippled out too. It affected other people in other games as well because they had connections to that city as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was one of those things that it was really tough to swallow. Rylar was a shitty.
Your sound just dropped, Ted.
If I move a little bit closer, Rylar was a shitty place, so it's a scenario of like, is it really that bad that it's that it's gone? But like, all the shitty people that were there that got out then went somewhere else and made our great city of Gryffindor a little bit shittier. So that part wasn't good. But sometimes that needs to happen. Sometimes you need to have a catalyst that you really don't have any control over, and you can have fun with that. And things can buckle down to a choice. And we've said many times, like, all right, there's a way of playing a game, and left is always left and right is always right. But if neither side is really locked in place, you can do with as the DM as you see fit. Now, if you've got a map and exactly like, okay, the creature came out of this ship and is going from west to east, and the players come on it and they decide to go west. All right, well, then that means they're following where it came from, not where it's going to. There's no way to look at that. But if the players don't have all the information and the thing doesn't have a definitive direction, it might not always be easy to ascertain exactly where things are and what you want to happen. If you want something major to happen to the campaign world and they followed the creature, well, maybe it was, oh, well, the creature was supposed to explode on the spaceship spaceship is sitting next to a beloved town. So the town gets wiped out over there while they go and kill the creature. So you can still have the moral quandary, effect because they went in the wrong direction. Oh, well, it wandered off and it didn't go towards a town. It went off into, the vast wilderness. Or they went and killed it. They weren't able to go and save the town. Or, however you want to, really twist the knife, if you.
So Zargon wants to know, were the actions of Scott Garabay's Eyeless Seer character some of the most morally questionable events, or what has that been the worst? I would not ever repeat the worst things that ever happened at any of our tables. Most of the worst stuff I would say happened probably like close to 2 decades ago,
Yeah,
if not longer.
The worst things were, you know, in the early days where we're trying to figure out, who we are as a group, and well before Nerdarchy, there were definitely some challenges with the Eyeless Seer. Um, but I would say, like, most of his decisions, like, he was, from his own perspective, he was a good person. There were a couple of things that he did that were questionable, but off the top of my head, I don't remember the specifics. Um, I think some of the challenges that we had with Scott, and he's a great dude, and I love him as a friend. Happy to game with him whenever possible. Um, but the style of games that we run versus what I feel his expectations aren't always the same. I had a very trying time with him where, as a low-level wizard, he essentially wanted to make like Iron Man armor in a fantasy world that, when the person inside got down to like 75% of their health gone, that it would teleport somebody back to town and be able to put somebody else in the suit. And he's trying to role play this in game, and I am like, dude, like, this is far beyond, like, single suit of this is far beyond anything that a typical D&D world is going to be able to create, let alone a set of 100 of them. And he was getting mad that the town was not going to fund his project to make this
How
happen.
did he lose the first eye? Do you remember?
I thought he gave it up. I don't remember.
I thought no, that was the second eye. That was his last eye. I think it had something to. There was an alley and a doppelganger. I think.
Oh, was that? I think he got kidnapped because of all of the things that he was trying to propose and do.
Oh, and during the torture, he lost an eye.
And like, I didn't want to go through the torture session with him. So I was like, all right, what transpires? And he's like, oh, I totally lost an eye.
Yeah,
And like,
that's
in the moment,
totally Garibay.
and in the moment he was happy with it, but like,
Mm.
it was brought back up numerous times, and I felt bad. I'm like, I'm trying to play the world based off of how his character is reacting.
Yeah,
Like, he was getting upset with me personally because we had a different view of what the game was capable of
yeah.
and how the decisions were made thereafter. So it was.
I just remember he got a hold of a robe of eyes,
Uh-huh.
and then that's when he made the decision that he was going to take his other eye out and become the eyeless seer.
Yep.
But I don't remember. Like, I think that might have had something to do with, maybe that was the alley and the doppelganger. We've had so many games since then, and like, sometimes some of our players do some kooky things.
I mean, it's been 4 to 5 years since that campaign wrapped.
Yeah.
On a lot of gaming. I mean, I brought up that in an average month, it's for I on an average month I play about 11 to 13 sessions. So that's a bit much.
It gets to be a bit much. NTWS25, hello, fellows of Nerdarchy. Greetings from Brazil. I'm writing my own OSR system. Hope to send you guys once it's published. Sounds great. We've had some fun with some OSR games in the past for sure.
Indeed.
And some of our favorite people make OSR games. Parks, how would you feel if one of your player characters kills another player character justifiably? The latter character kills thousands of people. We hate PvP at the table. For one. For two, we've had plenty of characters kill other characters at the table as well. It's part of the reason why we hate PvP. It never ends well, and it never sticks with the characters. In my experience, it always follows the players.
Now, I know that there are some tables out there who are okay with it. I know that there are some players who it's more about the time at the table than it is in building this particular character story. I've talked to players who, you know, the character has consciously made a choice to turn on the players, and when that character dies or becomes an NPC, it's all good, and there is no animosity towards the other players. I just can't do those myself. I'm not saying that like my PCs are as loved as my children, but I definitely love my characters and I enjoy getting into them. And, there's definitely some characters that I enjoy, playing more than others. But some of it has to do with like who the DM is and how great the story is, who the fellow players are. Like all of these components come in to make this thing. And if somebody else comes in and robs me of that choice, it sucks. Like I've got a mini here on my shelf of one of my favorite characters that I played decades ago, and I don't want to say I'm still saddened because it's not emotional anymore, but I would love to go back and save Grevin the Beardless One from death and keep him moving forward. He's absolutely not playable in anything past second edition, because all of the things he did doesn't work the same way it used to. And mechanically, even if he had all the things, the way fifth edition works, he'd be an utterly useless character because most combats don't last, more than 3 rounds. And his whole setup took 3 rounds to activate before he started fighting. So,
The good old days, and you hide in the corner for 3 rounds and then start fighting.
But that's what I did. That was one of my great old characters.
Yeah. Now I would say I think that the character that goes to the dark side or the evil plant, I've seen that pulled off even in our own games a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that works fairly well because it's a
I mean-
different. It has a different expectation and it's less personal
Right.
than when it's 2 characters or 2 players having a disagreement,
Right.
and it being settled via the characters at the table. That one is always bad blood.
A spoiler if you haven't watched the game that I've now finished, but that happened in Non-Traditionally Arcade. I had one of my players contact me at the beginning and said, "Hey, I want to have this, be a subplot. Can we work with it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely." I was talking to we have on Patreon, you can do, a chat with a Nerdarchist, once a month. And, I was talking to the person that I coach, and he was sharing a story with one of his games where the player basically like sought out, the essentially the BBEG as their mentor. And so at some point in time, it's like, all right, you've got to turn on the fellow players,
Yeah.
and see how that all works out. Like those kind of things, like those become great stories when they're a player choice. And full well that in order for the game to reach its expected, catalyst, its eventual end, you're gonna lose. So like if you're okay with that from the beginning, it's all good. But if you're not into that, don't go down those roads. But like the heated arguments and whether they be character to character or to player, there's always going to be somebody at the table who gets uncomfortable, and I'm usually going to be one of those because I'm not a big conflict guy.
Yeah.
I don't I don't get a whole lot of enjoyment out of it. I don't have a problem with us versus the NPCs because there's not the same relationship, and it's the characters at the table that are telling this grandiose story. So when there's a split, it's it just it ruffles feathers, and it can end friendships and it can end campaigns, and I'm not here for that.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can keep the players on the same page. I mean, in session zero social contracts, I've definitely seen PvP be a thing that's like, yeah, this is off the table. Now, just because you do that doesn't mean it will be off the table, but at least when comes time to resolve it and be like, well, look, we all agreed that we're not doing this. Now, in the instance that the other person mentioned was, you know, that character had done some atrocities and definitely went to the dark side. At that point, like it really just depends on how it was handled at the table, how everyone involved kind of handled it. That definitely falls into the territory, I would say, of at this point you're working with the dark side. You become the dark side,
Mm-hmm.
which can be fine as long as as long as they understand that that is the expected consequence of your actions. It's only a problem when that player is like, I don't understand why everyone's trying to kill me now. I only killed like a couple thousand civilians and commoners. What's the big deal?
But I mean, that's the choice you have to live with, and hopefully, as a DM, you've got the ability to kind of guide that situation, and like when a player starts making those kinds of choices, you can say like, all right, you got two choices here. One, understand that at some point in time you're going to become an NPC and you're going to make a new character, or the other players are going to find out, they're going to kill you, and you're going to make a new character. Um, like I see those are the only options.
Yeah, the only viable, and it's also perfectly okay when these things that happen to kind of pause the game, come out of the session and discuss it at the table as a group. Like, how does everyone feel about this? This is where the road it's going to go down. I know, like, some people may not like that because it breaks immersion, but like, seriously, sometimes these things can like end friendships, like Ted said, and have some, serious, real consequences. So I think it's worth breaking immersion to make sure everyone's on the same page. If this isn't the kind of thing that's been discussed in a session zero, and that's one of the reasons why having a session zero is really helpful, because then you can point back to it and go, hey, you're going in this direction, and we brought this up in session zero, and this was something you all agreed you did not want to do. Well, what's going on here?
And the other thing, kind of like tagging on to that, is even if you've had a session zero, or even if you haven't had a session zero, at any point in time, if something like this does come up, uh, you didn't discuss safety tools, or someone is going down a path that someone's not comfortable with, or what have you, you can pause the game and insert a session zero and have all of these discussions and come to terms with something that's going to allow everyone to be able to move forward, and you know you can still continue the game with everything resolved with its eventuality of how it can or how it will pan out.
I mean, we had a Star Wars game that we ran, um, and the GM for that game really just did not believe in session zeros, and like a lot of things came up during that game because all the players were not on the same page. We had a handful of scumbag dirtbag mercenaries trying to work with like hoity-toity nobleman Jedi, and had very different ideas on how to resolve things. And it was there was a couple times that was nearly a problem within the game.
Yeah, and that's tough. It's a struggle when that happens. Like, if you're not bringing the concept of what your character is or who your character is or what kind of goals and stuff you're looking to do, especially when you're talking about something like Star Wars.
Mm.
Star Wars is really designed, at least the current iteration, to have three different games because the type of characters that you can make from one system lead you in a direction. Do you want to make Jedi? Do you want to make scum? Or do you want to make rebels? Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Although the system does work fairly well in letting them interact with each other mechanically.
yeah, yes.
Mm.
But, you know, m- since we're talking about morals, the moral aspect, a mercenary, a bounty hunter, is not necessarily going to fit in well with the hoity-toity Jedi. All right, you can get mercenaries and rebels working together, but at some point in time, there might be a split. You can get rebels and Jedi working together, but at some point in time, even there might be a split.
I agree with Ted. The Jedi are always a problem. They suck.
Uh I mean, it's kind of like saying, all right, how often are you going to have a problem between your rogue and your paladin? A lot of rogue types are interested in treasure and loot and what have you, and a lot of at least old school paladins are into a certain kind of justice and what have you.
Lawful stupid.
Lawful stupid, as it's frequently called now. The current paladin doesn't necessarily suffer from that standpoint, so it's
Yeah.
easier. There's no demanding of tithe. Like, okay, you've got to afford that plate mail, but at the same time you got to give up 10% of everything you give or everything.
Right. The good old days. We went from that to Oath of Vengeance, Oath of Conquest.
So, like, it's a little bit more streamlined, a little bit easier to swallow, but like, it's good to have a certain level of conflict between the characters. It makes for a much more interesting story. But once you cross a certain threshold of conflict, it does more harm than good.
Yeah, there's no turning back. It's more about having tension than
Mm-hmm.
conflict, right? Tension
Yes.
between you know characters and players and characters and NPCs, and that doesn't necessarily have to always break out into violence. That doesn't have to be the only solution.
It's
Um,
it's it's a further extension of the will they won't they,
yeah,
uh, without a romance angle to it. Uh, you know, so when you've got those moments where like the characters get heated at each other, it's like, all right, is tonight the night? And there can be the backdoor meeting between these two players. We're like, all right, we're gonna play this whole campaign, but we're never gonna cross this line. But if the rest of the table doesn't know that they're never gonna cross that line, and they get uppity or they get in each other's face, like it gets excitement, it builds that tension, and it gets to be a lot of fun. But you never know, like, all right, who's going to do the first, who's going to make this, who's going to make that. There's a lot of questions.
yeah, it ratchets up the drama and role playing at the table. Instead of fighting, if you can debate, that's far more useful. And also, like, I mean, we even had a little bit of that going on in some of the more recent under the dome games. Like, and also it was an angle that I think some of the players really wanted to explore. Um, but it didn't quite come to fruition because the player that they were going to explore with bowed out.
Well, I mean, that sadly can happen from time to time, but like we, if, you continue on, you sally forth.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The fun thing about that group, because they're on the dirtbaggish side. But they're still like kind of like heroes in their own way, right? Because the world has kind of gone to pot. Um, like you guys got kind of had one pulled over on you, and once you realize, they're like, oh, good one. That was a good one. Like the characters, because the way they are, they didn't really get particularly angry about it because they're like, oh, because they would have kind of done the same thing. They just like they just acknowledged that they got one up, kind of.
Yep.
And also, they weren't sure if they could win the fight or not. So there was that. But it added an interesting element to it where it's like, okay, this character, this NPC is now has an adversarial role with the party, but they're not really ready to fight each other yet, which leads to more interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And even like, in that interaction, that character that is kind of villainous anyways, like, oh, you got me, you caught me, I tricked you, and like, but you're kind of beat. Here's a consolation prize, and hopefully that'll keep things interesting going forward and keep that NPC in play, for a while before you guys decide to go to war with them.
I really enjoyed that game. Looking forward to the playing this upcoming weekend and see where things go. I mean, I honestly feel like after after everything is all said and done, I feel like we need to kind of have a chat and figure out are we doing more harm than good? Um, do we need to rethink, or is there is this the world that we live in? Because I mean, while we're not in Dark Sun, uh,
Yeah.
like there is some Dark Sun undertones. I
Well,
feel like,
it's kind of it's on the slightly mildish post-apocalyptic side of things.
but from the character's perspective, like the people in charge aren't good people, and
No,
you
not
know,
really.
like so we've got this whole scenario where like world is shit, our leaders are shit, we're struggling to survive, and then at the same time some of the decisions we've made have not been the best. So how do we do better? What can we do better? So it can be a catalyst for actually like putting a moral thing in there can be the catalyst for putting more morals in.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I plan on once we're back at the grotto of if he remembers to actually have that conversation. We're still in the middle of a mission, so probably not the best time. That's
That's for next time. So we are just past the hour mark, so it is that time for us to wrap it up. This Tuesday, come hang out with us at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, where we're going to wrap up our Zoo Mafia game campaign 2 with Ted as the zookeeper. Come check that out. Or if you haven't been following, there's a playlist on the channel here. You can go catch up real quick before then. You got plenty of time.
22 hours. Just spend just a little under half the time between now and then.
And you'll be fine and caught up. But until next time, stay nerdy.
Hey, nerdy.